Welcome to Sip with Summers, the podcast where we talk about sex, intimacy, and pleasure. Because someone has to, and let's be honest, it may as well be me. I'm your host, Jennifer Marie Summers, board certified sexologist, certified sex coach, menopause coach in training, and your favorite inappropriate friend with a microphone. Around here, we cover everything from why is my libido ghosting me to is it normal to fantasize about pizza during sex? Spoiler alert, yes. So grab a drink and let's get into the good stuff because pleasure is your birthright and awkward is my love language. Let's spill, sip, and say the things most people whisper. Welcome to the show.
Today, we're getting into sex, intimacy, dating, and desire. All the things that we were never properly taught, but are definitely expected to figure out anyway. I'm joined today by Keri Green, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sex therapist with over 20 years of experience helping individuals and couples navigate everything from communication to trauma to desire. And what I love about this conversation is that Keri's not just teaching us, she is living it. She's dating in her 40s as a single mom, which means we're getting both the clinical and the real life perspective today. Keri, welcome to Sip with Summers.
Thank you. Love it. Love it. Yes. And all of that is true. I'm a very honored, humbled, and appreciative person to be able to do what I do.
I love that for you and me and our listeners. So let's start simple, but not simple. When people say intimacy, what are they actually talking about?
That's a great question. And that word comes up, I would say, in every single session I have, whether it's the first session with a new client, whether that client is an individual or that client is a couple, or that session is our 20th session 3 years into working together. I am so big as a therapist and just as an individual on the language of words and the definition of words. Sex is a language, and how you define intimacy in your relationship may be different than how I define intimacy in mine. I could have two people in front of me in a relationship, and in a heterosexual relationship, let's use as an example, he could define intimacy completely 180 difference than she does. So when a couple comes to me, when an individual comes to me and says, I want to increase my intimacy, I want better intimacy, I want more intimacy, my first question is, what does that word even mean? I really like my definition, doesn't mean it's anyone else's, intimacy is any connection with another person. I could even say that I was intimate with my daughter when we did homework together. May not be the word I choose, but that could be a close relational experience. Within a romantic couple, an intimate experience may not even involve clothes coming off. It may not be sexual at all. It might be cooking a meal together, having a conversation. So I first start with each person's definition, especially if it's a couple, and then we can decide, well, what is now the road we go down with changing the level of intimacy once we even know what we're defining it as.
Sure. Yeah. I see it all the time with my clients where they think intimacy and sex are synonymous.
Correct.
And, I think it's really important to recognize that intimacy can be like holding hands and having a conversation about your day. Like it's not about a penis and a vagina all the time.
Yeah. And just because you brought it up, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but again, how did two people in a relationship define sex?
Yeah, exactly.
People define sex. I just said this to a client last night. Most people define sex by two things: penis and vagina intercourse, which that in and of itself rules out so many genders, so many types of sexuality, so many positions, and an orgasm by both people. Now, is the sex penis and vagina intercourse with a possible orgasm by both people? Sure. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to argue that. But sex can be so many different things. Two 80-year-olds who define that they had sex last night is probably going to be different than two 20-year-olds saying they had sex last night. But to me, Sex is sex, however you want to define it. Same with intimacy.
Definitely. Now, you said something in our pre-interview about not missing opportunities for language.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the content of sex and relationships?
I don't want any person to miss an opportunity for anything. And as a sex therapist, if a couple could have a conversation, about anything intimate, but they are scared of being vulnerable. They don't have 30 minutes to do a deep dive into it. That's okay. Start with 30 seconds and see where the conversation goes. Any moment of being vulnerable, any moment of making time and holding space for your partner is intimate. If you don't want intercourse that evening, but you would love to just cuddle, you would love to have a hot makeout session, great. Do that. Name that. Don't miss an opportunity to be close and connect with your partner because it may not lead to sex, or sex isn't even what you want. So many people, again, put such a high stake on something that's a lot of pressure right there. Take that off the table and just interact, be, and see what happens. Sometimes the best intimacy is not planned and not talked about. It just naturally, happens.
Yeah. What's the first step for somebody who struggles to talk about sex in a relationship?
I think the first step is to have the conversation first with ourselves, be able to have the language that we want to use, have the dialogue that we want to have, better understand where our thoughts and feelings are even coming from. And sometimes we can't do that on our own. Sometimes that is what a sex therapist is for. A lot of my individual clients aren't going to necessarily lead to couples therapy. They want to better understand either their legitimate trauma, or they don't have any type of sexual trauma, but they want to better understand, why am I so scared, ashamed, embarrassed, uncomfortable, uneducated? And whenever I say educated, I am not questioning someone's degree from a college or what they, accolades they have after their name. So much of being a sex therapist is education. We don't know what we don't know. And if we aren't willing to take the time to be self-aware, how come I'm not comfortable masturbating? Why do I squirm a little bit when I say the word penis? Well, let's figure that out. And then once we're able to better figure that out and feel a little itty bitty more comfortable, then we can open up that dialogue with our partner. And again, I'm all about naming it. Saying to your partner, I know we need to talk about our sex life. I want to talk about the fact we haven't had sex in 6 months. I'm a little nervous. And guess what? Your partner may be nervous too. That may be a big reason why both people are avoiding a hard conversation. We don't want to do things that are hard. We don't want to do things that are uncomfortable. But guess what? The moment we're willing to, just even a little bit, that's vulnerability and that's intimacy. Sometimes even more so than an actual sexual experience would be that conversation.
Yeah, what's really coming up for me right now, Keri, is that the silence. I think that some people might think not bringing it up is going to protect the relationship, but I actually feel like the silence and the not talking about those things creates more distance in relationships. It's almost like an energetic, there's something there that is not being spoken. And I love the idea of normalizing it though. And I think a lot of people lack the confidence and the permission to have these conversations. So I love that you and I work in these spaces where we can help people feel more comfortable and confident about it.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so many more books out there now. There's so many podcasts out there now. I recommend to clients, hey, listen to Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are. Read the book Sex Talks by Vanessa Marion. And a lot of do it together. I don't mean literally listen to the podcast together, although I have recommended that, or sit down and read the book together. If that's going to be better for the couple to do it together, great. If it's better, hey, this week we're each going to read chapter 1. We're each going to listen to the podcast, on what such and such a date, and then come together and talk about it. Sometimes using that type of medium, hey, I really liked reading about this. I really, didn't feel comfortable hearing her say this. That takes a little bit of the pressure off of just going straight to your partner and saying, I feel blank, I think blank. If it's in reference to page 13, paragraph 2, this is what I interpreted it to mean. What did you think? it's a little less pressure using that additional, resource. Because we need to talk about sex. That is why after 20 years of being a marriage and family therapist, I wanted to take a deeper dive into sex therapy because I want to help normalize it and I want to help people feel comfortable talking about it and experiencing it. We all have these bodies that go with us everywhere we go. How much or how little are we, one, appreciating our bodies, two, feeling comfortable in our bodies and allowing our bodies to give us pleasure? So
Now, I want to shift into desire and long-term relationships. So, what would you say to somebody who feels like they've lost attraction to their partner?
I mean, it comes up all the time and it's different if that client is saying that to me one-on-one versus if that client is saying it out loud in front of their partner. It's still the truth. I still appreciate the truth and their vulnerability, but it's a little bit different if a client comes to me and says, I have lost attraction to my partner. What do I say to them versus they're dropping that bomb right then and there and that partner is devastated. How would they not be? So it's the question of first validating what they shared, appreciating and thanking them for what they shared, because that is not an easy thing to say. And then asking some of those harder questions. When did you start feeling this way? Were you ever attracted to your partner? Is there an opportunity to bring this back? Some people believe once the sex, has gone on for so long without having it, it's impossible to bring it back. Once they've lost attraction for their partner, it is impossible to find that attraction again. I believe our mindset is huge. And it's an option of desire. Do I want to find attraction again to my partner? Do I want to find a desire to be with my partner? So again, it's a lot of figuring out when did this happen and what is their level of motivation to get it back. And one of the hardest parts about my job is the question of, is it going to ever come back? Because sometimes it's not. Depending on how long it's gone on, depending on how much other resentment is there, how much ever other stuff is in the mix, sometimes it's not going to come back. And that's the hard reality of what do we do with the relationship at that point.
Yeah. So, would you say that in your experience, some relationships can be sexually done?
Yeah. I have a lot of couples come to me and say, we're best friends. We parent our kids amazingly. We have the same life goals. We, have the same, morals, but we haven't had sex in X amount of time, or we're still having sex, but we both agree it's just kind of, let's check the box. Is that the kind of sex they want to be having? I don't know. Again, as a sex therapist, I am not here to talk anyone into anything. If a couple is fine having sex once a day, good for you. If a couple is fine not having sex at all, fine, good for you. But if that couple comes to me and even just one of them, it doesn't even have to be both of them, wants a different sex life than the current one they're having, we've got to figure out if that's possible for both of them. And sometimes the reality is it's not. So what do you do with that? Do you accept your sex life is not where you want it to be? Do you stay in that relationship still? Do you consider other options?
Mhm.
What do you do with that? Because for a lot of people, sex is a big part of the relationship. But it's also back to the beginning of the podcast. How do we define sex? How do we define intimacy? And for a couple that hasn't had sex, some form of, penetration in weeks, months, years, you're not going to just go and have sex the next night. It's not going to happen. Or if it does, it's going to be mechanical and it's not going to be pleasurable, enjoyable, emotional. So for a lot of couples, it's how do we even get back on track? And sometimes it's going right back to the beginning, almost as if you're dating again. The hand holding, the kissing, the flirting, the teasing, while you're also raising kids. You've known this person for 20 years. You have aging parents. The mortgage is due next week. All of those things are still happening while you're still trying to find a place to come back together sexually. And it's not easy, but it's possible.
Definitely agreed. And I'm working with a couple in my coaching practice right now who's been married for over 20 years and they're struggling in their relationship. And the last time we spoke, we talked, or the time before we talked about recreating their first date.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went to the restaurant where they had their first date. They ordered similar food and they were sharing with me like we were giggling again, like we felt flirty and it's almost like this like hat or this like
Yeah.
coat that you put on.
Yeah.
The other thing that's coming up, I think, is for a lot of women in midlife, hormones change, there's more stress.
Oh, yeah.
You're dealing with aging parents and kids and your body is changing and a lot of women move into more of a responsive desire in midlife as well. And so I do think some of it, at least in my experience, is that when those midlife changes are happening with perimenopause, like women don't feel at home in their bodies anymore and begin to think like they're broken because the sex isn't the same as it used to be, whether it's vaginal dryness or low libido or exhaustion or all of those things.
That's 1000%. And the partner needs to know that too. Heck, even if it's a lesbian relationship and the other partner is also female, she could be going through very different things than her female partner is. So
Yes.
it's important to understand where the other person is coming from, and again, name it. I want to be intimate with you tonight, yet I might need extra lube. Heck, I may need lube at all. When before I didn't need lube. So whatever the situation is, name it. The biggest part to me of sex is that intimate connection and being able to say those hard things, being able to see those liquids come out and laugh about it or not make a huge deal about it. Sex can be messy. And back to what you were saying about the couple going back and reenacting their first date, I say the same thing. I also say you got to bring fun back into your relationship. As adults, we are very serious. We have a lot of pressures. We have a lot of obligations in our careers, with our children, with our lives. When was the last time a couple had fun?
Yeah, exactly.
Sex can be fun. Yet, even if we're not talking about sex, when is the last time you went roller skating? When is the last time you shared an ice cream sundae? Like, let's do that. Let's remember how fun and new that can feel. And that ideal of novelty, especially in sex, is so important. We do the same things over and over and over again. It's Groundhog Day every day. Sex is the same every time. Let's throw something new into it. Even if the new thing is putting on music when there's normally not music. Even if the new thing is, let's start having sex by standing up before we go and lay down in the bed. One little change, I don't think people believe, has that ripple effect. But people aren't willing to even do that one little change.
Yeah. Yeah. Novelty is one of my relationship values. And once I really embraced that, I found that my relationships are healthier because there is that level of excitement of not anticipating the same two sex positions at
Heck, even
10, 11 p.m.
Some people stick to just one.
So both of us work in the space of sexual health. And I think that, at least in my experience, I talk to people, they assume that like all of my clients I'm working with are like, dungeon master, like sex freaks. And I think the truth is most people that are coming to us are not having great sex. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be talking to us.
Sure.
So when somebody comes to you that's uncomfortable with their body or sex or sexuality, what's the first step you take with them?
Again, it's no different than the client who comes to me and doesn't feel comfortable talking about sex. When did you start to feel uncomfortable with your body? Have you always felt uncomfortable with your body? Is this specifically with your current partner? Are you comfortable with your body by yourself, but not when your partner is involved? Have you been comfortable with every other partner in the past, but this particular partner, something's different? So it's kind of figuring all that out first. For the person that is not comfortable in their body, maybe has never been, therefore they're not going to show up comfortable with their partner, I ask what they would be comfortable with. And a lot of the times this is women asking this question. And I ask them first to see if they know the answer. And if they don't, I tell them the answer. But where is the one place that we are all by ourselves each day and naked for a decent amount of time? And the answer is the shower if they don't come up with that right away. But most of them do. I start with even saying to them, with as little detail or as much detail as you want to give me, what is a typical shower experience like for you? And I think they think it's a silly question because they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, do you allow yourself to feel the water on your body? Do you take the shampoo and really lather it into your hair and feel how it feels? Do you smell the smell? Do you even know what scent your shampoo is? It might be coconut and you don't even know that because you're so quick. Get in the shower, wash my hair, get out. Got to get the kids ready for bed. I'm running late to work. That is a great opportunity to be in your body. And I said, if you want to take it to a sexual level, go for it. But that's not even what I'm asking or expecting in asking what their what their shower experience is. Just being mindful of how does it feel to lather the soap on my body? How does it feel when the water hits a certain body part and I'm a little bit more sensitive? The moment we're able to at least feel the senses in our body, on our body, then we're going to be more open to taking it to the next level, whatever that next level is.
Mm. I love the shower example. I am a little bit woo-woo. And so when I take showers now, and not every single one, because sometimes it's just checking it off the list,
Sure,
right?
you only have 5 minutes to jump in, do what you got to do and get
Yeah. But there are times, Keri, where I call it my mindful shower, and I'm like very embodied and setting intentions and anything. Like if I'm dealing with personal struggles, I'll imagine them washing off of me and down the drain. And, so it's like intimacy with myself.
And again, back to the word intimacy. First of all, you are a naked body in the shower. That in and of itself is intimate, but it doesn't need to be sexually intimate. That moment of reflecting and letting those things wash away is huge. And that's going to really set the stage for the rest of our day. And let's be honest, if we're a busy professional, if we have children, if we just need 5 minutes away from our partner, we love our partner, but we need 5 minutes just to ourselves, 10 minutes to ourselves. What better place to have that time alone than when we're in the shower? And hopefully for most people, it is a relaxing environment, so starting there. And then then what does that lead to? How does that feel when you put the towel on your body? When you undress and get clothed, are you looking at yourself in the mirror? Are you feeling what the shirt feels like going onto your body? Maybe that turtleneck is a little itchy that day and you need to wear something else. How much are you paying attention to how, things feel on your body? But so many times we're not even allowing ourselves to use our body, which is available to us every day, all day, beyond just the day-to-day things we have to do. We take our bodies for granted.
Yeah. And I really do hope that this is resonating with our listeners. And I want to encourage them to take a few minutes and maybe just, gently stroke your arm, rub your head, like get embodied, feel your body, and just take that 1 minute from all the responsibilities that you have to do for everybody else and just feel good in yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if it's not in the shower, throughout the day, you could be stuck at a traffic light and do this to your hand. You could close your eyes when you're at your desk, before you've got to go into that stressful meeting and just take a few deep breaths. When are we stopping and slowing down? And I know for me, I pick a word each year, as my word to focus on. As part of my vision board I make at the end of the year going into the new year. And my word for 26 is pause, because it is so hard for me as a busy professional, single mom. I've always been very fast in everything I do. It's very difficult for me to slow down and pause, but we need that. And especially in sex, we need to do that.
Especially. That's funny. My word this year is momentum, which is basically like no pauses at all.
Yes.
My partner is in the Burning Man community, so I'm not a burner, but one of the principles is immediacy. Okay. And so I think of the word moment in momentum.
Yeah.
And so just as a reminder to be fully present in this moment rather than okay, after I talk to you, I need to go do this and that.
That is pausing. That's
Yeah, you're right.
because it's stopping to even look around. And again, I keep referring to the senses. Look around. What do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What, all of the things. So I love that.
Okay, so let's get into the real life part.
Let's go there. Ready.
So dating in your 40s as a sex therapist, tell me, Keri, what has that been like?
So it's funny. I am in a relationship now, yet I've been on and off dating over the last 9 years. And it's kind of what you referenced before. When people think of a sex therapy client, they think of these people who go to dungeons and swing from chandeliers. I think a lot of people think that's who I am as a single person because of what I do. I know a lot about sex, but it's also been a very new journey for me. A lot of this happened after my divorce, after my marriage ended. I was 38 years old. I had been with two people sexually, my long-term boyfriend in college, my then husband. And I'm looking around, oh my God, I'm 38 years old. I have two young children. I've never dated, like not never, but very little experience dating. So, it's been a journey. Absolutely. I've appreciated all of the different experiences I've had. I think it's led to being a better sex therapist. I could tell you all about the dating apps. I could tell you all about first dates. I could tell you about dungeons. I could talk about a lot of things that are on the personal side that have, led to being more educated and experienced as a therapist. But it's funny because when I was first single and going on the apps and you fill out the profile, I said I was a clinical therapist because that is what I was. That is what I am. After a long-term relationship and I was getting back on the apps again, and I was at that point now a sex therapist, I questioned whether to put sex therapist on my profile. And I did it for a few reasons. Number one, I worked hard for it. I own it. It is who I am. And I also wanted to see, I date only men. I wanted to see what men's responses would be to put in it. And you get all kinds. You get all kinds for what your profession is. But it helped, to be honest, kind of pull apart who was I willing to talk to and who was I not, because of even how they responded to that being my profession. So it's been a very rewarding journey over the years. Absolutely.
So you have that in your profile. I don't say that I'm a sex coach in mine, but my picture is me at the Exotica Expo when I taught my Pleasure at Every Size class. So it's me with a vulva pillow and a penis squishy. So definitely like questions come up like, what do you do? But for people that are not you and I,
Correct.
when do you think is a good time to bring up sex in a new relationship or with dating?
So again, I answer that question based on how I've chosen to do it. And I also know I am not the norm when it comes to feeling comfortable talking about sex. The answer is when you feel the time is right. But that is different for everybody. I feel, especially dating, again, I'm in a relationship now, so I'm not actively dating right now. But when I was actively dating, that's going to come up before you have sex. Whether sex is happening on the first date or sex is happening 3 months into it when you're officially exclusive, sex needs to be talked about. And I've found a lot of men appreciate the woman being forthcoming and talking about it because that shows confidence, that shows comfortability, which a lot of women don't have. A lot of men don't have. So the generic answer is it's got to come up when it feels comfortable, but you can also slowly dabble into that. I feel a very important conversation to have early into dating, sometimes even before the first date, is tell me about your past experiences, dating experiences. When was your last partner? How long did that relationship last? I tend to get a lot of information. How did it end? Who was the one who ended it? Now, again, as a therapist and also just as a very curious, questioning person, I probably ask a lot more questions than, the average person would. But guess what? Those answers is information. And it's either information that's going to make me want to get to know the person more, or it's information that might make me question if this is someone I even want to meet for coffee on Sunday morning. So I think it's got to depend on the person and what they're looking for. But I don't want someone to regret not asking the question sooner, not sharing the information sooner, and wishing they had. So
Is there anything that you think people, I don't like to use the word should, but is there anything people maybe should be talking about early on and they're not?
all I say for two adults who are out there dating is being honest and making sure, as your shirt says, that there's consent. Yes, love it, love it. If my feeling is until those two people, whether you are dating casually, you are poly, you are looking for a future spouse and parent of your children, it doesn't matter. Until those two people have had a conversation that it is agreed upon that you are exclusive, you are monogamous, you are not sleeping with anyone else, doing something sexual with anyone else, then assume the other person is. Just because not doesn't mean the other person isn't. I was talking to a client who had been dating someone for 6 months. She had gone and met his family for Thanksgiving. They had gone on a couple trips together. They were sexual pretty early on. By early on, I'll say within the first month. And at 6 months, when she decided to finally bring up the "what are we" conversation, he admitted to dating other women. And she was like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, what do you mean? We haven't had the talk." And she's like, "I met your parents. We've gone on vacations, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Yeah, but I've also seen other people." She was devastated. That's an example where whether it was once they started sleeping together, once they planned their first trip, once she was asked to go meet mom and dad, it needed to come up in conversation. And I'm not going to stereotype, but I feel in my own personal experience and in my professional experience, in most cases, women are going to be the one to bring it up. Men aren't. So if you want to know, even in my own current relationship, I needed to be the one to bring up whether we were boyfriend, girlfriend or not, which in my mid to late 40s even sounds silly. But like we've been dating a few months, and in my past experiences, until it was talked about, there wasn't a guarantee that that's what it was. But my boyfriend's a little bit more old school, and he was like, "Yeah, you're my girlfriend." And I'm like, "But I didn't know." And he's like, "Why would you not know?" I'm like, "Because you didn't ask." And I joked, I'm like, "You didn't hold the boombox above your head and window." You know, that's a reference to a movie, by the way, whoever's watching and listening that doesn't know the movie Say Anything.
Yes.
We're nervous to ask, but we've got to ask. We've got to ask if that person maybe has an STI. We've got to ask if, hey, when we have sex, are you going to wear a condom? Do you want to know if I'm on birth control or not? We need to be responsible. So back to the question, as long as a person is honest in their dating, whether all they're looking for is sex or they're looking for a long-term, monogamous relationship, say what you're looking for. Know what you want before we got to know what we want before we ask for what we want.
Yeah. And also like ask and don't assume, but I'm guilty of it too. My boyfriend and I were together for like 4 months. We went on an international vacation and I met his mom. And then I'm like, "So are you like my boyfriend? Like, I don't want to assume."
Yeah, exactly. And then the opposite can happen. A person can go out on 1 or 2 dates and they think they've locked this person down. Meanwhile, the other person doesn't feel that way. I literally just had this conversation with a girlfriend the other night. She'd been dating this guy for about a month. And he made a comment, "Hey, I'd love for this just to be about you and I." And she's like, "Absolutely." Yet she's still on the apps. I'm like, you would be upset if the roles were reversed. According to what you just told me, he is not necessarily saying be my girlfriend, but he's at least saying, I don't want to be on the apps anymore. I want to see where this goes. And according to what you just told me, you've agreed to it. So if you are also on the apps looking for other options while he's thinking she's my girl, that's not already an honest relationship, So honesty is critical, especially when sex is involved. It's a safety thing also.
Especially then, even more so then.
Right. And let's be real, sex is a big part of dating. And so I've been working with a lot of clients in their like early to mid 20s who don't have a lot of relationship experience, don't have a lot of sexual experience. but they want to date, they want to meet someone. And how does that question come up? Do I need to tell them I may be a virgin? I've never had a sexual experience. Do I need to tell them maybe I've only had one or two experiences? That's a personal decision, whether you want to tell them that or not. But again, I'm all about owning who we are, the journey it's taken for us to get where we are, and showing up as that, as they say, true, authentic self. Because the other thing I see, kind of taking the conversation of dating further into a longer term relationship, I'm seeing a lot of couples come to sex therapy because they're 5, 10 plus years into a relationship and their sex life, quote, isn't what it was when they first met. Well, sure, I get why it's not where it was when you first met. When you first met, you were in your 20s, you didn't have kids.
Yeah.
Your hormones weren't the way they are. Yet, what I'm also finding in a lot of situations, more for the female than the male, they were not showing up authentically, even at the beginning of that relationship. They were doing things sexually that they maybe weren't really wanting to do. Not that it was an assault by any means, not that it wasn't even consensual. They agreed to it, but they were showing up in a sexual way that maybe they wanted to see if they could be that way, or they knew they weren't, but they felt they should, back to the word should, for that person. And then fast forward 5 years, that's not showing up anymore in the relationship. And the partner's confused. Hey, when we first met, you were all about making out in public. You were all about, PDA. You were all about X, Y, and Z. And now you're not. What happened? And then the person finally admits, well, actually, that wasn't really me. Wait, what? I wound up dating and marrying a version that isn't even really you. I mean, that person got, bamboozled or whatever that term is. Versus I was that way. I enjoyed that. I was also 25. Now I'm 35. We have 2 kids under the age of 5. I'm not going to, have sex with you on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So how do you help couples start the conversation about trying new things in the relationship?
I think it starts with, what is something you'd like to bring into the sexual relationship? I reference Emily Morse a ton. I love her, sexwithemily.com, and her book.
I have that book.
You don't have to buy the book, although I love the book.
I do too.
She provides a yes, no, maybe list. The yes, no, maybe list is a great resource. Go to sexwithemily.com, download the yes, no, maybe list. And how I present that to couples is go through the list and just read it. And this list has everything on it from cuddling to fisting. It's every G-rated, affectionate sexual experience to the X-rated. I don't even know what this word means. I need to Google it. So I always say to the couple, print out 3 copies of the yes, no, maybe list, one for each of you and one to fill out together. Look at the list. Just look at it. If you don't know what a word means, look it up. You can't answer yes, no, or maybe to something if you don't know what the word means. Then put the list away for a day or 2. Go back to the list and fill it out. Yes, no, or maybe. I also say to them with a caveat, there might be a difference between yes, I would give, no, I would not receive. So there might need to be clarification under some of the terms. Then you feel comfortable with your answers, come together as a couple and go over it. And start with your shared yeses. You both may have a shared yes that you've never done together because you didn't know the other person also would say yes to it. Or it was something you did in the early stages of dating, but you're 10 years into a relationship now and you haven't done that since then. So that's one tool, but also back to novelty. One little itty bitty new yes in a sexual experience is going to make the whole experience feel different. And that yes can be really small. It can be lighting a candle. It could be having a blindfold be involved for 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be this new crazy sex position. It doesn't have to be this new toy. It doesn't have to be extreme dirty talk. Again, if you want all those things, enjoy it. But again, when people think like, ooh, I've got to spice up my relationship, well, does that mean I got to bring a third person into the bedroom? No. Do you want to? And your partner's up for it? Go for it. But again, a little change is all you need.
Yeah, baby steps. Like you said, you don't have to bring the whips and the chains and a unicorn partner and, all of that into this experience, it really can start with something very simple like having a, worry massage candle or the yes, no, maybe list. And just a quick plug for myself, but I do have a kinky yes, no, maybe list on my website, summersoflove.com. It's a free download. But it's literally just like you were saying, where there's the yes, the no's, the maybes, and the couples can separately and then together fill that out.
And even if that couple wants to bring out the whips and chains and bring in the unicorn, which some listeners may be, Googling what unicorn means right now, that may take time to get there. If our goal is eventually to, do X, Y, or Z, that's great. What do we need to do to get there?
Yeah.
Because I always say with sex, especially, comfort first, pleasure second. If we are not comfortable, if we are not comfortable in our mind, if we are not comfortable in our body, if the room is too hot, if we had a burrito 20 minutes before, if we are not physically, mentally, emotionally comfortable, we are not going to be able to, in my experience, we are not going to be able to show up in that moment to allow pleasure to happen to the degree that it could. So we've got to be able to have that level of self-awareness. Now, do we need to be a 10 out of 10 on the comfort level? No, that may never be realistic. But we don't want to go into it being a 2 out of 10 on the comfort level and expect it to be an enjoyable experience. Most likely it's not going to.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it starts with us, right? It starts with those small practices of like feeling good, like going back to the shower example, or, rubbing your arm when you're at a red light sitting in traffic.
Yeah.
What is the biggest reason that you find somebody avoids seeking out a sex therapist?
So I wouldn't know because they are seeking a sex therapist, but the ones that are seeking sex therapy, I have found are so much more willing. I don't like the word work, so I don't want to say to do the work. I find my sex therapy clients are so much more willing to talk, to be vulnerable, to do the homework, to admit what's going on in their life, to want the change and actually make the change happen than other clients I've worked with over the years. Because if someone is seeking a sex therapist specifically, they want to make that change in their sex life, whether that is with their current partner, whether that is working through grief and trauma from years ago that they never were willing to admit to heal from, whether they are single and want to show up in a future relationship the best way they can, whatever they're seeking sex therapy for. And a lot of people are not willing, I think, to even look for a sex therapist or have even, I offer a consultation, a free consultation with any client that's interested, just to find out a little bit about what is going on to see if I'll even be, the right fit for them. Because back to what we've talked about, even from the beginning of the conversation with intimacy and desire, a lot of people are uncomfortable even saying the words sex, desire, orgasm. So I would encourage any person who is questioning anything about their sex life, even just to reach out to a sex therapist for a consultation. Go read their blog, go listen to a podcast, print out the kinky list. Back to definitions. Oh, well, I'm not going to print out that list. I'm not kinky. Well, guess what? We all are kinky. We're all kinky in a certain way. We just may not realize it. So it's wanting to embrace our sexuality. One of the homework assignments I give to a lot of clients after our first session, whether I ever see them again or we schedule to see each other again the very next week, is a sexual timeline. What has your sexual journey looked like? When would you define, again, back to language and definition, what would you define as your first sexual experience? 100 people are going to define that differently. Some people may say, well, that's the moment there was penetrative sex. Okay. Some may say, well, at 3 years old, this thing happened to me. Okay. Wherever your first example was, where has that led to today? And some people have had amazing, safe, wonderful, healthy, pleasurable sexual experiences. And I'm working with a client right now where her first sexual experience was a rape. That I'm not going to say defined the course of the rest of her life, but sure, it played a role. How could it not? Her very first experience was an assault. And here she is now in a loving, committed, monogamous relationship. And she's had a couple, little relationships since then. But how is that not playing a role? And we've got to talk about it. And I will only go as far, obviously, with the client through their trauma and through their experiences as they want to go. But we have to at least admit, I talk about life as a puzzle. We have to at least admit that is absolutely a puzzle piece. Whether we want to call that this big of a puzzle piece or this small of a puzzle piece, it's a piece in your journey. And as people do this sexual timeline, there's a lot of aha moments. Like, oh, it's going on my paper. It's being written down in my notes for my session with Keri next week. Wow, I forgot about this. Or I didn't realize this was as defining as it was.
And it's interesting when you see the connections.
Yeah. And again, we will define our sexual journey how we define it. Someone might say their first sexual experience was when they had a crush on Timmy in 4th grade. Did you and Timmy have sex on the playground in 4th grade? No. But that was when you had your first crush. That was when you started to realize what a crush is, what love is, what being turned on is, what, I sometimes ask clients, have you ever masturbated? 9 times out of 10, the adult client will say yes. Tell me about that first experience. What did that look like? What did that feel like for you? And I don't mean like legitimately feel like, although you can share that. Emotionally, what did that feel like?
Sure.
I have a client right now who it says that she started masturbating at 6 years old, and she didn't know it was any different than scratching her arm. So she started masturbating on the couch in their family room with her brother 5 feet away. She didn't know. And boy, was she shamed. Boy, was she yelled at. So her first experience of self-pleasure was bad, was wrong. And she's carried that with her for 30 years. So now we're trying to talk about self-love, self-pleasure, masturbation in a positive, healthy light. And she has to grieve the loss of that experience and embrace the experience now as an adult, touching the same body part she touched 30 years ago, but with a different mindset.
Is it possible to not deal with past sexual trauma and still have a healthy sex life?
I would say it can be. I've never experienced personally sexual trauma, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that or not speak to that personally. I think the answer would be depending on the reason the person is choosing to not talk about it.
Okay.
If they are burying it deep, deep, deep down, pretending it never happened, pretending it didn't matter, probably not. But I also have worked with people who have sexual insecurity, who have discomfort in their bodies, who have never had any type of sexual assault. And then I've had people who have had sexual assault and don't feel like that has contributed, to where they are right now in their sex life. So again, I think at least to name it and then to kind of assess, well, where do we need to go with this? Do we need to go anywhere at all? I have clients who come to me who have worked through that in other forms of therapy, so I don't need to work through that with them. I have had clients come to me who have had 10 therapists and have never discussed what happened to them when they were young, and now they feel they need to. So I don't think it's as black and white as yes, they can, no, they can't. I think everything is, situational.
Yeah. I mean, sex is a spectrum too. I mean, everything's a spectrum, really. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, we're getting close to our time, but I do have a couple closing rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
You down with this?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll give my answer too after you give yours.
That shared experience.
What is the biggest myth about sex?
That the definition of sex has to include penetrative sex and orgasm.
Yeah. My answer would be that you have to have an orgasm every time. Yeah. Most underrated turn on.
Mutual masturbation.
Ooh.
I feel that if a couple, and by couple, you could be on your first date, you could be 30 years married. 2 people, I'll say 2 people, I won't use the word couple. If 2 people feel safe enough, vulnerable enough to touch their body in a way that turns them on individually with their person, right next to them while they are also touching themselves, I think that is sexier, hotter, more vulnerable, more intimate than any other type of sex. But that's just my opinion.
Mm. Mine would be eye contact. Just want to like stare into your eyes, like kiss with your eyes open. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Good one.
What's one thing every woman should understand about her desire?
It changes. It
Yeah.
changes all the time. You could be horny for your partner in the morning and want to have sex with them that night. And by 4 o'clock, that's gone. And it's okay that it's gone, but let's figure out where it went. And do we want it back? Desire changes. Desire, if you go to a restaurant, you may want to order something different off the menu than you ordered last time. So again, when we even say desire, that's across all, topics. Desire changes.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better, Keri.
That'd be your answer too. Okay.
Yes, definitely. The last one I have for you is what's one conversation every couple should have this week?
How do you feel I am showing up as a partner in this relationship? Now, if you want to add sexually to the end of that, kind of like the fortune cookie where you add in bed, if you want to add sexually, fine. But how do you feel I'm doing as your girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance, partner? And ask for a real, honest response. And that answer, I'm guessing and hoping for most couples, is going to be positive. You've been amazing with X, Y, and Z. And I miss this. I could use more of that. And if you're asking for how am I showing up, be willing to receive what's being told to you. I check in with my kids all the time and ask how I'm doing as a mom. I want to know. So checking in and asking how you're showing up as a partner, I think would be a great question for everyone to ask this week.
Oh, I love that. That's it. You know what? I'm gonna ask my partner that next.
What's your answer to that question?
I would say that mine would be to treat the relationship like a business and have a time set aside to sit down and have these conversations. And I really like to encourage my clients and couples to do it where they're holding hands, they're not distracted, they're not, drunk or high or anything like that. The phones aren't going off.
Totally. Absolutely. All those things.
Really having those few tender moments together where there's no distraction and you really are just focused on each other. And maybe the conversation would be, when is our next date night?
I encourage clients all the time to do that check-in. And again, with life, how busy it is, sometimes we do have to schedule that and carve that time out. And that's okay. As long as it's happening, it doesn't matter how it's happening, whether it's spontaneous or not, make it happen.
Yeah. Keri, this is such a great conversation today.
Dude, I
so
agree.
much. Yeah. I love that we got both the clinical and the real.
Yeah.
Right? That's where real change happens, right? So if you're listening and this resonated with you, this is your reminder that you are allowed to have conversations about your needs, your desires, and your pleasure. You're not too much. You're not broken. You may just not be having the right conversations yet.
Absolutely. Thank you. Such a pleasure being here.
Yeah, you too, Keri.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Sip with Summers, where we laughed, learned, and probably said clitoris more times than your high school health teacher ever did. If you liked what you heard, be a gem and leave a review, share it with your favorite group chat, or send it to that friend who really needs to hear this. You know the one. For more tips, tools, and slightly inappropriate jokes, follow me on social or head to summersoflove.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay turned on, and as always, keep sipping.